CEO of YWCA Glendale and Pasadena. And I'm just so excited to welcome you all being a part of this amazing discussion that we're going to have, so we can all learn how we can be better allies to the LGBTQI plus community. We are so honored to co-host this event with our amazing partners, GlenDaleOUT and Glendale Unified School District. Social science teacher, Patrick Davarhanian. I also want to acknowledge the incredible panels of speakers that we have here today. Vahan, Bournazian, Mamikon. I'm so sorry. I'm getting nervous when I say names, and I've been practicing all day. Mamikon, Hovsepyan, Lilit, Martirosyan, Perch, Melikyan, and Erik, Adamian. So sorry. I apologize, you guys, in advance. I practice all day and then I get nervous when I'm in front of everybody. But welcome, you all. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of this amazing event and this panel. I also want to shout out Senator Portantino, who is here today, and school board GUSD school board member Charachchi, who's here as well. So thank you for being in community with us. We're hoping that this is a start of many events and collaborations we can partner on to elevate critical voices in our community and beyond, and work together to find solutions for long-lasting change. It's important to center the voices and needs of the LGBTQI plus AI plus community and approach the work of allyship from a perspective of what they need versus what is comfortable for us being the gatekeepers and formal sources of power to give. And so what does it mean to be an ally? At YWCA, we work towards a more just and equitable society that benefits everyone. We are so committed to making sure that we are creating a welcoming environment for anyone who comes through our doors. As long as members of our community are experiencing hatred, experiencing violence, we are going to be here. YWCA, our motto is that we are on a mission. And we are here until peace, justice, and freedom and dignity for all. So once again, we are so honored to be in community. Thank you to all the people who are joining this. Just being here today shows that your investment and commitment to making change in our community that benefits everyone. Thank you all and have a wonderful panel discussion. And now I'm going to welcome our moderator to this conversation, Patrick.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see you all. My name is Patrick Davarhanian. I'm a social science teacher at Clark Magnet High School. I'm the GSA advisor there and an active member of our community. I'm going to pass it over to James, if he's available.
I am available. I'm at work. Don't tell anybody. I have, just a moment, please. I have a quick opening statement that I wrote that I am going to read right now. GlenDaleOUT is a grassroots organization dedicated to building, evolving, and moving forward queer voice in the narrative that is Glendale. This particular event is especially important to us. It was inspired by an incident at a local high school, and that incident would turn out to be neither isolated nor exceptional. This program is not in response to a single event. This is not an Armenian issue, and this is not a queer issue. This is a current Glendale issue. I am grateful to YWCA, especially the diligence of Fabiola and Hasmik, for opting such a strong allyship with their queer community. I also deeply appreciate this opportunity they've provided to lesser heard voices that make up the whole of Glendale. Minus tonight's program, I'm not sure anyone would even know this is happening in our community. And I'm grateful to Patrick for inviting this discourse to occur. I've seen Patrick more than once patiently convert unfortunate realities in the queer community to patient, teachable opportunities like tonight. So thank you, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Greg. So let's continue. I'm going to go over a couple of Zoom protocols and etiquette rules, if you all don't mind. So that I ask that we all please use our full names in our Zoom profiles if possible. So if you haven't had a chance, please do rename yourself when you get a moment. Please use the raise hand feature and wait to be called on when you have a question. If you'd like to ask a question in the chat, you may do so. Please use the chat feature appropriately. Also, please stay on topic if possible, and remember to be respectful of others. In an effort to be consistent and equitable, we're also going to be asking our panelists to respond to the questions in alphabetical order by last name, just to keep it consistent and fair. And also, if we do have some students in the audience, quite a few students, which is wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So those of you who are students, if your teachers have offered you extra credit, please know that at the end of this event, you will be given a Zoom link, or excuse me, a survey link, and you'll have to complete that survey link. You'll have to open up that link and complete it in order to get credit for your participation tonight. So thank you very much. Okay, at this time, I will ask our panelists to briefly introduce themselves, again, in order of last name, if possible. And thank you, welcome. So let's take a look here. And I believe we're going to start with Erik Adamian.
Hello. This reminds me of in school, whenever it would be in alphabetical order, I would always be the first one up. So I'm glad that not much has changed since then. Hi, everybody. My name is Erik Adamian. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the board president of GALAS LGBTQ+ Armenian Society and a co-founder of Charachchi, a multimedia project, which also we have our other co-founder here today, and I'll let him introduce the project to you all. I'm so thrilled to be here with you all for this critical conversation on a topic of allyship and showing up for LGBTQ folks, especially LGBTQ Armenians. And I think that the correct time for having these conversations has been always, and right now is the best time to talk about it too. And I will pass it on to the next panelist.
Thank you and welcome. Vahan Bournazian.
Yes, hello everyone. So my name is Vahan and I was born and raised in San Diego, California. I practiced immigration law and then I moved to Armenia in 2004 in order to explore and live my ethnicity. And it was also my personal response to the genocide to live in Armenia and contribute to Armenia's development. And I taught law and human rights. And that was in 2004. And during that time, I've also been engaged with many different civil society organizations, including Pink Armenia, and I really appreciate their work. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to participate in the documentary that Pink Armenia completed. And I've always been an advocate for equality and human rights, and especially within the LGBT context. And today I'm talking to you from Vancouver. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mamikon Hovsepyan.
Hi, so I'm really glad to be here with all these amazing friends from Armenian diaspora. Though it's 5 a.m. in Yerevan, but I'm really happy to wake up and see you all. So I'm an LGBT activist in Armenia for quite a long time already, and part of Pink Armenia, which is actually celebrating its 15th anniversary this year. I couldn't imagine that we could go this long and still be very active and proud, but we are doing everything to make sure that LGBT people are feeling safer in the country. There are still a lot of challenges, but this is our work, and probably we will continue our fight for so quite long. So if you watch the documentary, I'm so happy for it because it was our first film, but I'm sure it's not the last one. We will have more and let's discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lilit Martirosyan.
So, hello everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me participate this meeting. It's very important for me. I am Lilit Martirosyan, the founder and president, Right Side Human Rights Defender NGO. My pronouns she, her. Our NGO already working 6 years, and we focused transgender issue in Armenia. You know, it's very difficult situation in Armenia to raise transgender issue, but we continuing help our community. Yes, it's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Perch Melikyan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Perch Melikyan. I use him, he, him pronouns. Born and raised here in Los Angeles. I'm a sexual health educator. I went to school for film, and I've always just had a passion with working with the LGBTQ+ community. And that's where I got started working in the HIV field. I wanted to be more involved with other queer trans Armenians. And I thought, you know, what better way than just to make a media project. So I'm the other half of Charachchi with Erik. We often see media that's shared about queer Armenians that is very trauma-based or trauma-focused, which is valid and important to talk about. And so what we wanted to do is just to bring a different side of LGBTQ Armenians to life. So we're capturing stories, experiences, and topics that may be a little bit too taboo in the Armenian community. But with all of that, we're just also centering their authentic voices. So this media project is just consists of videos and photographs, interviews, and we seek to just really create a wholesome archive of queer Armenians just simply existing. With all of that being said, thank you so much for creating this space, having this discussion, and thank you so much for having Charachchi be part of the panel.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to see so many familiar faces, so welcome everyone. With the help of our participants, we've developed a list of questions, and we would love to ask our panelists today some of our questions. So if we're all ready, I would like to begin with our first question, and then we'll go once again in order, alphabetical order. Sorry, it's the teacher in me. I can't help myself. Our first question for tonight: what does allyship mean to you, and what sort of needs can allyship address? And I'm going to go ahead and post that in the chat as well, just so you can see it. And Erik, if you would like to start us off, whenever you're ready, whenever you're comfortable, please feel free.
Absolutely. What a wonderful question, as allyship can mean so many different things. And I think it's really beneficial to kind of hone in on what are the specific components of being a good ally. So I would say that allyship is many things. It's standing up to oppression and battling oppression in a lifelong manner. It is one of the deepest expressions of care towards your loved ones and your communities. But perhaps most importantly, and for the purposes of this conversation, it is acknowledging the ways in which you are privileged as a cisgender heterosexual person, and then utilizing that privilege to support your LGBTQ+ loved ones and your community. As far as what allyship can address, I think that allyship can address community safety, shifting archaic and harmful cultural beliefs towards LGBTQ people, It can address creating a healthy school climate for K through 12 students. And this is not only for LGBTQ plus students, this is for all students. And it is based on many extensive surveys that have been done by LGBTQ advocacy organizations, such as GLSEN. I forgot to mention in my day job, I'm a queer history educator. So I work with a lot of K through 12 teachers to kind of train them on how to teach LGBTQ history in K through 12 classrooms. And we have to refer to a lot of different studies, and we have to work with a lot of groups that may be resistant towards having LGBTQ history represented because they believe that it is only beneficial to LGBTQ plus students. Not that that's not reason enough for this, but also these studies have shown a lot of evidence on how effective allyship and effective LGBTQ representation in school curricula can also create a healthy school climate for all students. Further than that, it can contribute to the psychological and mental wellness of youth, workplace safety and inclusion, and I can go on and on and on, but I think at a very basic human level, it can address the need for genuine human connection. All of us need to show up for each other in the ways that we can. All of us need to leverage the different privileges that we have to uplift each other in order for us to live in a more equitable world for everybody. That's all I have to share.
Thank you for sharing. Vahan, would you like to share a little bit about our question on what allyship means to you?
Well, Erik was so poetic, it's hard to follow. So I would say if we can just remember 3 words, listen, validate, and question. Because if we refer to the documentary, Listen to Me, there's a reason why it's called Listen to Me. And the basic problem I find, especially in the Armenian community, is that certain stereotypes and rhetoric regarding those stereotypes are just repeated and repeated and not questioned. And that's because no one is listening. So the film is called Listen to Me because every individual has a narrative, every individual has a story, and these stories are not being heard. And when these stories are not heard, the reality that emerges is a false reality. It's a reality that is just a regurgitated rhetoric, the regurgitated rhetoric of patriarchy. So we need to take a moment to really listen to someone else. And when we listen to someone else, we need to give up control. And this is what most people find difficult to do, is because we all have a concept of reality, and we have our own place in that reality, and we have to be able to give up control and not insist on our perspective and be able to listen to someone else's story in order to understand first. And then validate, because we need to be able to validate the individuality of others, because that's what we always want for ourselves, each of us. And we can't get that unless we're giving that. And question, I see it in terms of questioning ourselves, because we all have these ingrained prejudices and privileges, and we're not aware of them. So we need to question ourselves. And then when we hear the repetition of stereotypes, we need to ask people or challenge people or question people about these stereotypes. So in the film, the documentary, there's one part where Mel explains that in private, her friends will support her, but in public, they won't. In public, they'll go ahead and repeat whatever others are repeating because they don't want to take the risk of either seeming like they are also LGBT or just putting themselves out there, or why do it? What allyship really comes down to is helping others evolve also, we need to focus on our own evolution in terms of questioning our privileges and prejudices and help others do the same. I'd say it like that.
Thank you. Mamikon, would you like to share a little bit, if you'd like?
Sure. I mean, Vahan said it all, but yeah, I agree with Erik and Vahan, and what I would say that in most of the cases in our community, people are not able to speak up because they're stigmatized, discriminated, so they cannot come out and they cannot speak as part of the community. So Allyship helps a lot to raise the voice of voiceless, let's call it this way, and bring our stories to another level. When in the documentary Listen to Me, 10 brave people could speak up in front of the camera to tell their story about their childhood, about their family, about their life journey, and so on, we can understand that thousands of people cannot do it. They want to do it, but they cannot do it. And from one side, I'm so happy that maybe we don't have a lot of people who can openly speak about their experience, but from other side, we are lucky that we have that people. And so if one cannot talk about their life, then others like allies and other activists can do it for them and support to tell the story, share the story with the world, and show also our colors and what are the needs in the community. Yep.
Thank you. Lilit, would you like to share a little bit about allyship?
Yeah, I will speak the transgender about the transgender community, that our transgender community and for our advocacy work for transgender people rights, allyship plays a vital role when people see that cis persons stand with us and take actions to near our needs, their attitude and behavior changes step by step. Our allies actively promote and aspire to advance that culture of inclusion, tough, international, positive, and efforts that benefit transgender and LGBTQ community as a whole. We live in a very conservative and environment where cis people, by becoming our allies and understanding our needs, promote our cause by impacting a lot of transphobic and homophobic people and changing their attitude towards the community.
Thank you very much. Perch, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has said it all, but you know, allyship to me means a continuous process in which someone with privilege seeks to learn about the experiences of, let's say, LGBTQ or marginalized group of people, and to really empathize with their challenges and start to build relationships with that group of people. One thing that stands out to me is just being able to listen to the community, be aware of implicit biases you might have, and just to be supportive by letting folks speak for themselves whenever possible.
It's wonderful. Thank you all for sharing that. It's so important what you've all said. So moving on to our next question. It says, how can allies support folks who are in the journey of taking agency of their queer identity? And I'm going to go ahead and post this in the chat as well. And if you'd all like to change it up a bit, I'd be happy to, we can go in opposite order too. Maybe we can alternate the questions, right? Maybe go from bottom to top, top to bottom. So in terms of panelists who'd like to share? Yeah, let's do that, right? Let's, why don't we start, Perch, would you like to start us off, and then we'll go to Lilit and Mamikon?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So everyone's allyship needs are unique, I believe, to who they are, their experiences and the situations that they're in. Allyship should be focused on supporting and meeting the needs of others, and just to echo it again, just really listen to what their needs are, be empathetic, and just be supportive.
Excellent, thank you. Okay. Lilit, would you like to go next?
Maybe after?
Sure, sure. Mamikon?
Yeah. Sorry. What I was thinking about this question, that sometimes queer people, when they feel alone and they don't know anyone around, they are afraid also to meet other queers in their like cities and so on. Sometimes having a person who can hold your hand and and can say that I'm here for you, whatever happens, you can open up your heart, I will listen to you. This is very important, to have someone next to you. It doesn't matter if that person is part of the community or someone else who just can understand you. So this is important for me that I can highlight regarding this question.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I was actually presenting the other day to our school on, and it was an LGBTQ PD, and then in the background on one of the teachers' bulletin boards, I saw a big ally flag, and that was the first time I've seen that, and it was just so important, right? We need to be there for each other.
Yeah, also what I remember when I was a student, when I was coming out for myself still, and I had friends, when I came out to them, they were not queer, they were even from very conservative societies. They were shocked, but the second reaction that they said, okay, but you are our friend. So I was like, wow, this is not what I was expecting. That was like a great example of being alive for me. So probably they were the ones who helped me to be more like stronger and to come out and be open about my sexuality, and then also get involved in activism. Why not?
Wonderful, yeah. Vahan, did you want to share a little bit?
Yes, I'll share a story. So personally, one of my biggest challenges was I had this mental block about coming out because I had this strange idea that I had to choose between being Armenian and being gay. And we hear this rhetoric from the ultranationalists that say and repeat often, no, there cannot be a gay Armenian, or no Armenian is gay. In other words, the patriarchy amongst the ultranationalists is so strong that they demand that any Armenian be heterosexual. And if you're not heterosexual, you can't be Armenian. And they've proclaimed themselves the ones to define others. So what helped me was I saw in an AIM magazine an article about gay Armenians. And it was such a shock to me at that time that there were gay Armenians that were publicly out. And so I think that those of us who can be out, we need to participate in the public sphere in order to show people that being gay doesn't mean that you sacrifice other identities. And also we need to challenge the ultranationalist rhetoric and the conservative and patriarchal rhetoric, which keeps trying to define for us what it is to be Armenian or male, etc. So I think that's an allyship that is more like in a public sense, because the others have spoken of allyship in terms of supporting others individually. And so I want to bring the other concept of taking public action that creates the space for others to come out or to feel that they can have multiple identities.
What an excellent point. Yeah, the othering of LGBTQ Armenians is unfortunately so common. Let's see, Erik, would you like to share a little bit?
Absolutely. I think that one running theme so far in the conversation is listening. And I'm going to add my emphasis on the importance of listening. I mean, there is a whole documentary, Listen to Me, made about it. And I think the amazing point of the title of that documentary is that that is the basic, like that's just the basis of allyship, you know? So really making sure to listen to folks who are taking their agency of their queer identities. Another point that came to my mind was standing up against bullies when you notice discriminatory behavior, especially in the public. And another point that I wanted to make is that a lot of the times we have very well-meaning allies who may show their allyship in a performative way or make their allyship about themselves rather than the queer person that they're supporting. We all make mistakes. Allyship is very much so a lifelong learning process, as it's been iterated so many times. Own up to your mistakes as an ally and apologize. That's all queer folks are looking for. It is very important to acknowledge your mistakes and then move on. And to bring it home, please, please, please remember that queer people taking agency of their queer identities is really not about your feelings and your opinions about this situation. It is about them and their personal journey. And again, maybe this goes back to the conversation around privilege and understanding your privilege and understanding that you need to make room for folks to be themselves and not make it about yourself. So as a good ally, it is your responsibility to make room for that. And last but not least, be kind.
It's a great message, be kind. I have the stickers, be kind, all over my classroom. We need like a constant reminder, I think, right?
Amazing. I wish I had you as a teacher, Patrick.
No. Lilit, I don't want to leave you out. Did you want to add a little bit to the allyship?
Yeah, I will answer the question in Armenian. I will ask Mamikon translate. Ինչպես կարող են լայները օգնել աջակցել մասնավորապես տրանս համայնքին, կարևորագույն նրանում է կայանում, որ յուրաքանչյուր տրանսեքսուալ անձինք անցնելով հորմոնալ թերապիան, իրանց շատ պետք է այդ աջակիցները, որպեսզի իրենց կողքին այդ հոգեբանական վիճակը, դեղորայքային այդ վիճակում տրանս անձանց կողքին լինեն մարդիկ, որոնք կաջակցեն։ Ինչպես նաև կանգնեն կազմակերպության մեր աշխատանքներում միասին կարողանանք բարձրաձայնել առհասարակ տրանս LGBT հարցերը, թե Հայաստանում, թե Հայաստանից դուրս։
So the point is how allies can support particularly trans community, and what Lilit mentioned, for example, when a transsexual person, for example, when they are going through hormonal therapy and all this transition period, it has a lot of it affects a lot the person. So having allies when they can support people who are going through it, and also stand next to the organization, raise a voice of trans community, and help the organization in their advocacy work. I guess I managed to summarize what Lilit says.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's always nice to hear it in our mother tongue. So I appreciate that. So our next question, it says, what does it take for an ally to stand against homophobia and transphobia? I'm gonna copy paste it in the chat here. And if you all like, we can start from alphabetical order again, whatever works for you, please. All right. Erik, do you want to start us off with this one?
Yes. So first and foremost, it takes a lot of empathy. Again, as I just mentioned, putting yourself in the shoes of the person that you are expressing your allyship towards. And I think on a more practical and technical level, it takes a lot of education. And as a cisgender gay man, I can say that I have had to educate myself a lot about trans history, about trans folks, and the specific set of challenges that they go through, that even though I am queer, I am a gay man, I don't go through the same things. So I've had to do a lot of education, and perhaps this is a point also to highlight how important it is for LGBTQ folks within the community to build allyships for each other, because oftentimes we don't talk about that. Oftentimes it's like queer people versus straight people, and that's not the case. You can be an ally to another person even if you are in the LGBTQ community yourself. Not to digress from the topic, just wanted to say that a lot of education followed by meaningful, effective, and non-performative action. Again, your allyship is about really showing up for people that you are demonstrating the allyship for. It's not about showing off your empathy to the public. It's not about the show, it's about what you're actually doing. And last but not least, it takes understanding that one's own privilege can be used to create a supportive space for LGBTQIA folks. We all have the, not to generalize and say we all, but for the most part, we have access to the internet. We have access to a lot of resources, a lot of wonderful organizations that are leading the work on building allyship and building resources for LGBTQ plus communities, and especially LGBTQ plus Armenians. So engaging in a healthy dialogue with these organizations, with the people who are leading the organizations, and really asking how we can show up as allies for one another.
Thank you for reminding us of that. It's kind of poignant. We talk about the history of the movement. The history of the movement was started by trans activists, right? Think of Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson. So
absolutely, yes.
Thank you for reminding us of that. Okay, let's take a look at the next person who'd like to share. Vahan, would you like to share on this question?
Yes, I would like to take a slightly different perspective on this, and let's focus on when an ally wants to question someone who is homophobic, transphobic, etc. So, because I said originally, listen, validate, and question. So there's a basic rule of advocacy is that you have to take the audience based on their values, who they are. You cannot talk to an ultranationalist about the value of individual freedom. So what you have to do in order to have traction with advocacy when you're facing someone who doesn't share your values is first try and show that you do have a commonality with them. So even though you're progressive or you're supportive of LGBT writes, you're also Armenian, so you have to pull out your Armenian card when you're dealing with an Armenian ultranationalist in order to show that you have the same clout. And then once you establish that commonality, you have to sort of address their concerns. These people are often misled because, number one, they have antiquated and incorrect understanding of human nature, of sexual orientation. And there's a lot of education that you have to do. But also you have to use the right language because words dictate reality. And this comes to something very specific with Armenian, that we have words like gomvorushum, meaning orientation. It's used for orientation, but when you break the word apart, it's made up from a word that comes from choice or decision. So the word itself lends itself to this false premise that people are making a choice, that they're not following their true individual innate nature. So there's a lot of things that we have that are specifically difficult challenges in the Armenian context. And I want to say that when you're being an ally, try and work to understand the context for the person that you're addressing. And you cannot outrightly negate their context, but you have to show that you share a commonality with them and then lead them on a path of questioning so that they start to question their premises, because their premises are antiquated, they're ill-founded. So you have to bring science into the equation. You have social science and the ultimate in science. And there's a very good not documentary, but a TEDx video by a doctor who's speaking to an Irish audience who does this very well, because he's talking to an Irish audience, Catholic audience, about the value of LGBT people. And so he's addressing the issue from their values, not from his own values of individual freedom. So I think that we have to educate ourselves about advocacy, and we have to understand our context, or the context of the person that we're dealing with.
Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Mamikon, did you want to share next?
I will try. Just to be honest, Vahan was my professor, so always I enjoy to listen. And when he speaks after that, it's so hard to come back to the conversation. But yeah, thank you. I just remember a story about some of our allies, because in Armenia, we are lucky to have a lot of allies in our work, in our lives, and they are involved in different stages. We organized allies talk. They openly spoke up. They told about their journey, how they become more, how they started to accept LGBT people and understood that discrimination has no place in their lives. But also, we had some issues. For example, one person who was very active with us, and then she got some state job, and she said, "Can you remove all my inputs from your website because I don't want to be bullied when I get this job?" And I said, well, we are being bullied every day. So, I mean, you could just feel that little pain for some period, but that couldn't be that long for you. And I said that being ally is not only having wine with us in a cafe where everybody can recognize me and you. It's not only the case, but also when you can openly speak up and be an ally, like full-time ally, not just once a year. because from my example, for example, if I support environmental activists, I'm not environmentalist, but I think that way day and night. I mean, it's not just joining their protest for once a year and then come home and do something against environmental issues, but I think that way. So also being an ally for queer people, for the whole movement, it's like you should be part of that. You should make your lifestyle like that, and probably not making homophobic jokes anymore, not teasing trans people, not making, I don't know, things in your circles. Probably you allies have also some homophobic friends, but it's not that when you are already away from the queer movement, you can make some discriminative jokes with them as well. So this is a conversation that, again, in the question, it is clearly mentioned that there are no perfect understanding of what is ally, but at least for me, yeah, being ally is it's like your full time, the way you think and the way you act.
Thank you. Yes, full time, right? 24/7. That's the key. Great point. Lilit, would you like to share a little bit on this question?
Մենք պետք է գիտակցենք, հա, որ ally լինելը այդքան էլ հեշտ բան չի։ Ինքը կարա խտրականացվի տրանսֆոբ, հոմոֆոբ հասարակության կողմից։ Պարբերաբար ու այդ ամեն ինչը կարող է հանգեցնի վատ հետևանքների։ Ու ally-ները պետքա լինեն խիզախ, վճռական, ունենան ուժեղ կամք, որպեսզի կարողանան աջակցել տրանս եւ LGBT համայնքին։ Շատ դժվար է, մենք ունենք շատ ally մարդիկ, որոնք որ կանգնած են տրանս անձանց կողքին, ու իրանք ուզում են ոչ թե օգնեն բացահայտ կերպով, բացահայտ ձևով, այլ իրանք ուզում են օգնեն ավելի թաքցված, հա, թաքնված ձևով։ Mamikon, I will ask you.
Yes, I was also taking notes not to miss anything. So what Lilit says that, of course, being an ally is not an easy thing, because those who are our allies can be bullied by homophobic and transphobic society. And so they need to be strong to support the community. Also, when it comes to trans issues, I think it's even harder. So Lilit mentioned that there are allies of the Right Side NGO who are next to the organization, next to the trans community, but they cannot be open allies. So they act the way they can. They are not open, but they have their contribution to the work of Right Side NGO.
Thank you so much. Perch, did you want to share on the question?
Sure. Everyone said it so beautifully. Chef's kiss. Wonderful. But yeah, everyone pretty much has said it all. But just to kind of say something is just to honestly use your privilege to speak up whenever someone is being discriminated because of their identity. Also, language is changing. You know, some things may have been, you know, less or homophobic or transphobic from the past versus now, or, you know, again, there's new language coming about, you know. So educate yourself, be respectful, all in all, be kind. And I believe, like Erik said, we're human, we all make mistakes. So own up, apologize, grow from your mistakes. And I'm probably gonna say this a million times, but listen to the community. Most importantly, listen to the community and hear what their needs are.
Absolutely, thank you. We have one more question before our call to action. So let me share our next question here in the chat. How do we build spaces that are inclusive to all LGBTQIA plus families and communities? And how do we make existing spaces non-binary? And perhaps we can open this up to whoever would like to share first. Please feel free to chime in. So once again, the question is, how do we build spaces that are inclusive to all LGBTQIA plus families and communities?
I can make a comment to start things off. I think that we have to consider context. And when you're talking about communities and creating space, there's two potential avenues: creating a new space and helping an old space become progressively open. So in the Armenian context and in the diaspora, the communities are usually centered around the church. The church historically has provided the community center or the focal point for Armenian community outside of Armenia. And the problem there is that the church is very conservative in its dogma. And that's not to say that it's Christian. So I think we need to remind the church that Christianity is based on, like, we use their own philosophy against them. I mean, Christianity is open to all because every individual can achieve redemption. Therefore, every individual is equal. And Jesus said he called upon everyone to only love and respect as equals others. And he said to dismiss the rules that are used for discrimination, actually. So there's a lot of work to be done in the religious sphere, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel, because there's already been a lot of work done by former evangelicals who have come out and or parents, evangelical parents that have left their churches in support of LGBT rights. So there are frameworks that we can employ in order to challenge the Armenian church to become more Christian and to open itself up to accepting all individuals. That's a difficult, but it's a difficult challenge, but that's the reality of the Armenian diaspora. And the alternative is to create alternative spaces. And I see that that's happening already. We have Charachchi here with us, and we have these organizations that are creating new spaces for new community premised on true equality. So that's important. I would say that in the Armenian context, we also have to recognize that there's an additional problem other than Christianity or the traditional church. In the Armenian context, we have a problem with our existential crisis, which is that Armenian culture is preoccupied with continuing to exist because of centuries of foreign domination, genocide, and continuing aggression against Armenia itself today. And on a 2014 survey of Armenians, the highest value is conformity. Armenians value conformity because there's a misconception that if everyone conforms, meaning that everyone fulfills their role, everyone fulfills their gender role, everyone fulfills their role as son or father or mother or daughter, that we'll be okay. And there's also this concept that in order to be Armenian, we have to remain as we always have been for the past centuries. And all of this negates individuality and negates the individual. And it has this misconception that we get strength from conformity, when actually we get strength from diversity. As a society and a culture, we're excluding our diversity, we're excluding our individuals. And what we end up doing through this hyper conformity is that we reduce our numbers. We are the ones that are causing ourselves to grow smaller. So we exclude the Armenian that's half Armenian, we exclude the gay Armenian, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a very difficult context that we need to recognize and evaluate and address. And I think that we cannot just come at this straight with individuality and diversity, or that we can't come out this that everyone wants freedom and that you have to recognize the freedom of others in order to have freedom for yourself, which is true. But it's not enough, I think. I think that if we talk to the nationalists with their existential crisis from solely human rights, hardcore, rights are rights, freedoms are freedoms. If we create freedom for one person, it has to be for everyone. It's not enough to address the context that we're living in. So we have to go further, and we have to find ways to help them realize that diversity is the strength, that inclusion is the strength, that exclusion weakens. So this is a challenge for the Armenian context.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to have to ask you to come in as a guest speaker for our ethnic studies class next year. Let's see. If anyone else would like to share, please feel free. There's no alphabetical order, so please feel free to chime in or use the raise hand feature, whatever you'd like.
Okay, I can go on. Exactly what I noticed, for example, in Armenia, the spaces are mostly based on exclusion instead of inclusion. And unfortunately, even I noticed some queer organizations are working based on exclusion. For example, making event and saying that if you are this type of person, you cannot come to our event, instead of making it another way. But I don't want to pay attention on negative things, and just want to say that if we open up our spaces, our businesses, our initiatives, or whatever we do based on inclusion, then it works better. Usually, I bring example, for example, on disability issues. Armenia is not very accessible country in these terms, and usually they say because of finances, because of some things, they cannot make a city and the whole environment more accessible. And my example is that if you make anything accessible for people with disabilities, then it is accessible for everyone else, for mothers with kids, for kids on, I don't know, their bicycles or whatever. So, I mean, this is the thing. If we open up for everyone, that's in that case, we have more benefits. And just an example, only recently, a year ago, a business started to be more inclusive and organized. It's a club that initiated by themselves to have also queer parties. It was a bit shocking because previously organizations, we were approaching them, organizing some hidden parties and so on. They were providing the space, but saying that, okay, but don't announce that we provided this space. And here now we have a business that opened up, and they are organizing queer parties, and they are announcing it on their social media pages. And also they are showing, giving a sign that this is a place where everyone can be included. And queer people, allies, those who are not sexist, racist, or homophobic and transphobic. That's why, as an ally, also, if we have any privileges, possibilities, anything that we can make it more open and talk about it, not only present to the queer community that, you know, my space or my business or my initiative is open for you, but also openly announce that it is open for everyone and there is no discrimination in this space. That would help others to see and understand that this is the way that we have to work. This is the way that we have to continue building spaces and making it non-binary, because also, you know, everywhere is, I guess that toilet issue is a big issue when there are toilets for men, toilets for women. What if I don't want to enter? Like, okay, I'm a cisgender gay man, but sometimes it's also, I don't feel safe in those toilets for men. I don't know. Probably I have my own traumas back then, but still, this non-binary, the binary issues is also concerning. And from one hand, I am happy that Armenian language probably doesn't have that much male, female, you know, things, and we don't have pronouns for men and women, so we have just one word. And I feel safer under that word. We don't have he, she, it. But from other hand, of course, I understand that still the society and there are a lot of things that we have to work to make more non-binary.
Thank you for sharing that. Such a great point. I never understood the whole issue with using the toilets. In our CTA conferences, we had unisex toilets, and people went in, went out, did their business, and there was no issue. It's interesting how people create these artificial problems, right? Would anyone else like to share from our panelists on this question?
I just wanted to add something because it's kind of similar to what Mamikon just mentioned. I also thought about this question in terms of like a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of an approach. And I think that it's important for establishments, for structures, even communities that are primarily not created to serve the LGBTQ plus community. It is important, in order to make it inclusive towards LGBTQ plus folks, it's important to have LGBTQ plus folks represented in the decision-making for such entities, which kind of tackles the inclusion part of things, true inclusion part of things. And also bring equity to the table as well. And that can look like understanding that LGBTQ plus folks deal with a different set of challenges and traumas and you know, lives, and make the space, the community, whatever it is, cater those spaces and those communities to LGBTQ plus folks. And on some, you know, just basic levels, for example, normalizing using pronouns when introducing yourselves, regardless of if you identify as LGBTQ plus or not, because it's just, I should mention that it's just as important that cisgender straight folks talk about their pronouns, like mention their pronouns, because then that normalizes a lot of things. So that was kind of my understanding of the question. And I just wanted to say that I can't, you know, there's a lot of hard work to do, especially in Armenia, when it comes to making LGBTQ plus spaces more inclusive. And we are here to support you in any way that we can, based on the feedback that we get from you. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lilit, Perch, would anyone else like to share?
Ես կուզենամ կիսվեմ, հա, շատ դժվար է, երբ որ կարողանաս մեկ տարածք ստեղծես բոլոր, հա, LGBTIQ+ մարդկանց համար, Բայց ես կուզենամ մեր փորձով կիսվել, ինչ է անում մեր կազմակերպությունը եւ մենք ինչ ենք անում, որ LGBT պլյուս անձանց, non-binary անձանց տարածք տրամադրել նրանց ընտանիքի անդամներին։ Բարբերաբար կազմակերպությունը տարին 2 անգամ իրականացնում ամառային եւ ձմեռային տրանս ճամբարներ, որտեղ նաեւ non-binary person-ներ անձիկ են ներառված որպես մասնակիցներ ու իրենք խոսում են իրենց խնդիրներից, բարձրաձայնում են, նույնը ծնողները իրենց երեխաների հետ ու մեր կողմից դա ստացված է։ Ինչպես գիտեք, right side-ը տրանս կազմակերպությունն է ու մենք բարբերաբար ունենում ենք ֆոկուս հանդիպումներ, քննարկումներ տրանս համայնքի ներկայացուցիչների հետ եւ ոչ միայն տրանս համայնքի ներկայացուցիչների, ծնողների հետ նույնպես քննարկելու խնդիրները, փորձելով նրանց տալ կրթություն կազմակերպության կողմից սոցիալական, իրավական, հոգեբանական տարբեր ծառայություններ։ Այսքանը երևի թե Մամիկոնը որ ավարտի ես կշարունակեմ։
So it is hard to create place for inclusive place for all LGBTQI people, but sharing the experience that Lilit mentioned, what they do provide their space of right side organization for trans people, for non-binary people and their families. And Lilit shared a successful story of their organization where they organized trans camps for several years already. And in this trans camp, not only trans people are participating, but also non-binary people where they raise their issues and talk about different aspects, and this works successfully. Right Side is a trans organization and they are organizing meetings with the community, families, also doing a need assessment of the community, because based on that, providing services, psychological support and other things to make people more welcome and safe in that environment.
Մասնավորապես non-binary մարդիկ առհասարակ տրանս անձիկ զրկված են կրթություն ունենալու իրանց իրավունքից, մենք շատ քիչ տրանս մարդիկ ունենք, որոնք որ դպրոցն են կարողանում ավարտել, համալսարանն են կարողանում ավարտել, հիմնականում կազմակերպության նպատակներից մեկն է տրանս համայնքին ուժեղացնել, տալ նրանց կրթություն, տարածք, մասնավորապես մենք ապրիլին grand opening ենք ունենալու նոր safe space-ի LGBTQ+ անձանց, որտեղ ունենալու ենք ռեսուրս կենտրոն, որտեղ մարդիկ կարող են սովորել անգլերեն կուրսեր, համակարգչային կուրսեր, ամենակարևորը որ տրանս համայնքը առհասարակ LGBTQ համայնքը լինի կրթված, շատ քիչ համայնքի ներկայացուցիչներ ունենք, մասնավորապես տրանս համայնքի ներկայացուցիչներ, որ կարողանում են տիրապետել տարբեր լեզուների։ Դա հիմնականում եկել է դպրոցից, համալսարանից, երբ որ մեծ տարածք չեն տրամադրել, տրանս անձանց տարածք չեն տրամադրել կրթվելու։ Մենք բարբերաբար
Շարունակեք կներեք։
Բարև ձեզ։
Չէ, հիմա Լիլիթը խոսում է, կարող եք սպասել։ Կներեք, sorry։
Հիմնականում զրկված են այդ կրթության իրավունքից ու ինչ է տեղի ունենում, իրանք դպրոցի դասերին չեն նստում, այդ դպրոցական չեն կարողանում ընդունվել համալսարան, որովհետև դպրոցից ստացած գիտելիքները բավարար չի, ու այս ամեն ինչը մի հատ մեծ խնդիր է։ Ու մեր կազմակերպությունների կոնկրետ right side-ի ռազմավարական ուղղություններից մեկը ոչ միայն տալ օգնություն իրավական, հոգեբանական, այլ նաև նրանց ուժեղացնել կրթություն ստանալու։
So what Lilit added that particularly trans people are not able to continue their education because of transphobic behavior in the society, and in general educational system is not very open for trans and non-binary people. So the organization it aims to strengthen the community, to provide not only psychological, legal, and other services, but also to work on education, providing knowledge to the community that they can use in their future career and so on. And also Lilit mentioned that there will be a big opening of their new center. I can assure that it's a beautiful place. I saw the plan Lilit shows me. So this space that they will open also will be a center where people can receive language courses, computer skills, and other knowledge that they need for their career. Because of bullying and discrimination in educational institutions, a lot of trans people cannot fulfill their plans in education, and they don't continue high education in universities or other places. That's why they are left outside of the programs. So in this case, they need alternative sources of receiving knowledge and skills.
Thank you for sharing. I think, Perch, did you want to share a little bit on this topic too before we move on?
Yeah, I'll share something a little bit. I don't mean to speak up on GALAS, but as far as building spaces that are inclusive to LGBTQIA families, they do host source sessions, which helps bring together families and their children to kind of, speak about the topic, and helps build a space, safe space to really talk about that. And also, probably just echoing off, just to make existing spaces more non-binary, is just to normalize pronouns, even with cisgendered hetero folks, and really utilizing gender neutral bathrooms. But other than that, everyone else said it so well. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. Before we get back to our call to action, I'd like to send the mic over to Bournazian.
Yes, thank you for that. Hi, everybody. My name is Bournazian. I'm here on behalf of YWCA Glendale and Pasadena. One, I'd like to acknowledge that it's an honor, and all of the input that we've heard tonight is very powerful. I've learned so much, and I've also unlearned so much already. And again, thank you for sharing that knowledge. Let's start off with the Q&A portion. Again, folks in the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat box personally to me or Patrick, and we could see if we have enough time to share your question. The first question I'd like to ask for our panelists is, what is queer liberation to you? When do you feel most free, if you do? And are there moments where you see that your organizing is working? I know, again, as an organizer, as a community activist, it gets really tiring. The movement seems like it's like an eternal movement. Whoever feels comfortable to share first, please feel free. If not, I might have to tag on someone. Oh, yes, please, Vahan, if you'd like to go ahead.
It's a wonderful question. I think that it's a process, and unfortunately, it's an eternal process. And if you see things in the short term, you will always be disappointed. So you have to make the choice to look at things through the long term. And if you look over the long term, then you can find the inspiration to carry on. And I think that sometimes personally what I do is I remember Michel Foucault, a philosopher who talked a lot about power. And what he says in one sense is that resistance is power. To resist is to exercise power. And I believe that, and that helps me because you don't always have a hard, concrete result that you can hold on to say that this action was successful, this campaign was successful, this program was successful. It's too short term. And maybe you'll never see that result, but maybe it will happen, like you can affect individuals and never know about it. But when you recognize that you're resisting something, and just by resisting prejudice or resisting power being used to censor you, you are exercising power yourself. That's one way to answer that.
Thanks. Thank you so much for that. I think resistance is definitely key, right? And it's an eternal process sometimes, I think, especially with the context right now with the homeland. I think Armenian people have been resisting for a very, very long time, unfortunately, but there's power in that too, right? I'm going to ask, wait, sorry, I'd also like to give some space if anybody else would like to answer that. What is queer liberation to you? Yes, Erik.
I think as an Armenian Iranian immigrant, queer liberation takes a very different shape for me than, let's say, queer liberation as advertised on TV. So I think that this is something that I've been doing a lot lately. I find myself apologizing for a lot of things. And I don't mean like saying sorry to people, but just kind of feeling guilty or feeling like I need to apologize for existing and for just, you know, being myself, my whole Armenian, queer, Iranian immigrant self.
Mhm.
And in a cis heteronormative society and in a white supremacist society, it's very often that we run into that. So I think queer liberation to me is working towards getting to a place that I am absolutely celebrating all parts of myself, instead of having myself finding myself second guessing a lot of my identities, or second guessing the way that I think about certain things. So I think it's very much a work in progress. And to echo what Vahan also said, focusing on the bigger picture, you know, and resisting and keeping, as much as possible, keeping a positive attitude, which can be very hard, and I definitely personally struggle with that, is how I approach queer liberation. It's very multifaceted. It's not as simple as waving a pride flag in a gay pride. It's really not.
Yeah.
So.
That's super strong. And thank you for sharing that. And I'm so happy that you touched upon the sorry tendency that exists in our communities. I always tell myself that sorry is a very patriarchal word, and I always have to tell myself, stop saying it, right? Like, it's a bad habit and we've internalized it, but not saying sorry anymore is a form of resistance.
It's the sorry, it's the amot, it's the shame. It's something.
Exactly. And amot is so rampant in the Armenian community, unfortunately. But we're divesting from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other responses for this question? Perch, do you have a response, if you don't mind? No response from Perch. Or sorry, you're muted if you're speaking. That's okay if you don't. Any other responses, or we can move on? Okay, I think we can move on. So a lot of people have been reaching out to me with the diasporan context, right? So we want to hear from the folks in Hayastan how the diaspora could be of support to you from, across the seas versus, and what's that difference between the diasporan support and the local support in the homeland? If Lilit, Mamikon could respond, and of course, Armenian is welcome too.
Yeah, okay, I can start, and then Lilit, if you want to say now, we can go other way. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Ես մտածում եմ ինչով կարող է աջակցել, հա, Սփյուռքը։ Ես նախ շատ լավ համագործակցություն ենք ունեցել Սփյուռքի մեր գործընկերների հետ, բարբերաբար մեր Սփյուռքի գործընկերները մեզ donation են անում տրանս անձանց, մասնավորապես բոլորովին վերջերս ընտանիք թիմը մեզ աջակցեց պուճուրիկ գումարով, որպեսզի մենք օգնենք համայնքի ներկայացուցիչներին, ու ասեմ դա մեզ մոտ ստացվեց, ու շնորհակալություն եմ հայտնում եմ բոլոր քույր անձանց, այն բոլորին, ովքեր որ դրամահավաքը իրականացրեցին, դա մի պուճուրիկ գումարնել, հա, դեպի Սփյուռքից մեր տեղացի LGBT անձանց շատ օգնում է։ Մասնավորապես գիտեք COVID-ի հետևանքները, գիտեք պատերազմի այդ ամբողջ իրավիճակը, երբ համայնքը մեկուսացված էր, երբ համայնքը խտրականացված էր, այդ ընթացքում պատերազմի հիմքում էլ ավելի խտրականությունը բարձրացվեց տրանս LGBT անձանց վերաբերյալ, շատ կարևոր է, երբ որ դրսի համայնքը կարողանա կանգնի Հայաստանի LGBT անձանց կողքին, ցանկացած ֆորմատով, դա կլինի աջակցություն, ցանկացած ֆորմատով կարող է այդ աջակցությունը լինել, չգիտեմ, թեկուզ մասնագիտական, հա, եթե Ամերիկայում կան էնդոկրինոլոգներ, կարող են այդ էնդոկրինոլոգները աշխատել մեզ հետ, որպեսզի տրանս անձիկ համապատասխան հորմոնալ թերապիա անցնեն, եթե կան հատուկ հոգեբաններ, որոնք որ ցանկություն կունենան աշխատեն տեղացի տրանս անձանց հետ, իրավաբաններ, ցանկացած մասնագիտության տեր անձիկ, ովքեր կցանկանան համագործակցել մեզ, մենք դա բարձր կգնահատենք, որովհետև դուք գիտեք, որ առհասարակ Միացյալ Նահանգներում եւ դրսում ապրող համայնքը ավելի կայուն է, քան LGBT համայնքը այստեղ Հայաստանում։
So Lilit mentioned that there is a important cooperation within their organization and the diaspora. And as an example, recently, Antanik, if you know, there's this beautiful group that is more active on social media. They organized a fundraising campaign for Right Side and provided this amount that they collected helped the community on different issues. So thanks to people who organize such things, even a small amount that Right Side received helped in different needs in the community. So as an example, during COVID lockdown and war, trans people were more isolated and stigmatized. And such communication with diaspora who can stand next to the activists and organizations in Armenia helps a lot. For example, another way how diaspora can help, if there are specialists, let's say endocrinologists, psychologists, who are willing to work with the community in Armenia and help organization, that's also can be a great contribution.
Mm-hmm.
So from my side, what I can add, let me remember what I wanted to say. Of
You're
course,
good.
yeah,
You're good.
yeah, Pink also has great connections with the diaspora and with organizations, Armenian organizations in diaspora, whether it's GALAS or even not non-LGBT organizations that are working directly with Armenia. It's always important to have this connection. So beside the donations that individuals or organizations are doing, it is also important when people are spreading the word. There are individual activists, there are people who are, they have like a lot of followers or big audience in social media, and whenever they spread the word, it helps us a lot because we reach more people. And of course, our work is mostly directed to the local community, LGBTQIA community in Armenia, but it's also important as there are also a lot of queer people in diaspora, and they want to feel this connection with the motherland, with the queer community in Armenia. And I think this kind of bridges are very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the answers. Any diasporan panelists have responses to this question? How could the diaspora be more supportive for the queer community in the homeland in Armenia? Any responses? Yeah, go ahead, Erik, if you'd like to share.
Just something short that I wanted to share is I really appreciate Lilit and Mamikon being here and giving us, you know, a firsthand account of what we need to do. I mean, Mamikon, we've been in touch quite a lot in terms of like the ways that we can support efforts that are going on in Armenia. And perhaps one thing that I wanted to impart on diasporic organizations is that if the aim is helping LGBTQ efforts in Armenia, it is important that the efforts that we have here are specifically catered to what would be most useful to folks in Armenia, rather than ideas that are developed out of a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with what the actual needs are in Armenia. Mm-hmm. So that's something that on the board of GALAS and a lot of other wonderful organizations here like Andanic Collective that we're very mindful of. And we are always looking for your feedback and guidance in how we can best support you.
Thank you for that. Yes, Vahan?
I have a question. When we talk about the diaspora supporting equality in rights in Armenia, mm-hmm. I think it cannot be a one-way street. And we have to ask ourselves, how can we learn from people like Lilit and Mamikon and from their organizations about how to promote equality and rights within diasporan communities or within the different diasporan institutions? Because my experience is that certain diasporan institutions and communities are possibly even more conservative or less progressive than the average Armenian in Hayastan. I mean, Armenia has its ultra-nationalists, but Armenia has a vast majority of people that if you talk to them in a private setting and it's confined to just private issues, they're willing to be tolerant in a private framework, but maybe not so tolerant in a public sphere. And I think this public and private issue is a very difficult issue in Armenia. And it's also very much a part of the diasporan reality. So I just want to remind us that change needs to happen within the Armenian communities. And it's not only Armenia.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I feel like in some certain way, I think the diaspora is definitely an extension of the narratives that exist in the homeland, unfortunately. And we have a lot of work to do in the diaspora as well, even here in Glendale, with the Armenian community. Yes, Gray.
Well, and Vahan, this evening you've touched on a lot of things that you and I need to like have coffee for a couple of hours to go through all of it. But on this issue alone, I would just like to say that one of the reasons why this program in particular resonated so deeply with me is that I somehow, and perhaps naively, but nonetheless have it, that the more we can normalize queer in Glendale, the more that that will sort of spread out and sort of cross over and go back and forth, and that those conversations will start to normalize, and that waves effect will go across and connect the two.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa.
Absolutely. I feel like the work that we do in our communities are definitely not isolated in that direct community, right? The impact is beyond borders. Any other thoughts for this, or we could move on?
Could I just share a quick thought?
Absolutely.
Something came to me in terms of, we're all talking big picture, but I think it also starts with the individual. It starts with us. I think we need to be consistent. We need to be persistent. We need to be insistent on embracing the entirety of our identities. We need to come out. We need to, make that statement. And in the diaspora, perhaps it's uncomfortable, but it's something that must be done. And unfortunately, so many of us aren't out in our communities. So that's important too.
Thanks for that input, Patrick. Any other thoughts regarding this? Okay, I think it's safe to move on. Another person asked us to ask the panelists, do any of the panel members fear for their safety, and how do they deal with it or handle it? I ask because many people already have anxiety in their day-to-day life, especially during the global pandemic. If anybody feels comfortable to share about this, please feel free to start us off. Any takers? Takers, no takers. Okay, yes, Perch.
Sorry, just so it's not left empty. The only reason why I'm not responding is because I come from a more privileged place where I don't fear from my life. So that's why I'm just not speaking about it.
Okay, thank you for indicating that. I know I feel like this is a heavy question. So yes, Erik.
If I may also add, it is a heavy question, and the truth of the matter is that, I can just speak for myself. Being on this panel, of course, there's a lot of visibility that comes in participating as an out Armenian queer person, but there are a lot of Armenian LGBTQ folks out there who are perhaps not even they're not a part of the panel, or they're not a part of the even the Zoom event as audience members because they do fear for their safety. So the space that was left for after that question was asked, I just felt like that I needed to fill that space with that statement in order to make it very much so clear that there are a lot of Armenian LGBTQ folks who are very scared for their safety. They're just not as visible as the rest of us who are here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I think it's definitely a heavy question. And safety is different for everyone, right? So this may not be a fair question to ask right now. I'm gonna move on if that's okay. I think this is a better question. Being in the public eye can be exhausting. How do you recover or sustain your energy to advocate for yourself and our communities? Any takers? If this is also not a good question, we can move on as or Mamikon, if you would like
Yeah,
to.
I can. I mean, the questions are great. Sometimes we need to think a lot about it, or we
Right.
prefer not to speak about it.
And that's okay.
But yeah, when I decided to be open and come out in front of cameras, but I was ready for it, and I knew that this way I will help more people to feel safer. And from other side, I had to think about my safety and security even deeper and deeper. And I realized that now I have a different lifestyle. I used to it, and I kind of I'm fine with it. I don't panic. But for example, in Yerevan, I don't go to many places. I know where to go. I know which places are more or less safer. And even I was shocked, like about 10 years ago, that even I received life threats in Los Angeles. I thought during my trips, I feel safer because nobody knows me here. I can walk in the streets freely and nobody will pay attention. But then, okay, I'm not safe even in bigger cities. But this is something that, I don't know, I don't get angry a lot because it's different life. So let's enjoy it.
Yeah. Thank you for that input. And thank you for sharing. I know sometimes it could be tough too. Any other thoughts before we can move on? I understand we are short on time too, so yes, Vahan.
It's an interesting question about self-care.
Right.
And I think that up until very recently, that concept was even foreign to me. And I had to be introduced to that. And I think that this concept of self-care is an important concept that we need to be discussing and sharing with others, because the third highest value amongst Armenians is sacrifice, because individuals should sacrifice for the sake of the community so that it exists. It goes back to the crisis. So the Armenian context is a difficult context, and I think many people need to be introduced to self-care and different ways of practicing self-care. That is what you need to do so that you don't burn out.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's very easy for us to burn out, right? Yes, Lilit.
Շատ դժվար է Հայաստանում. It is very difficult that you transgender or LGBTQ people raise LGBT or trans issue. It's very difficult. I want to share my speech in National Assembly 2019. After that, I faced a lot of discrimination, a lot of hate speech, hate crimes here in Armenia. All people wanted to kill me. A lot of people, it's very difficult that you activists stay in Armenia. I want to stay in Armenia and continue my activism, because I feel that I must help a lot of LGBTQ people in here in Armenia. Every moment I can left the country and stay a refugee in different countries. But it's but I say that it's my work. I love my LGBTIQ community. I love my community. I must stay here. It's a very difficult that you go outside and can't sit cafe or restaurant, because a lot of people know your face. because
Right.
a lot of time they see your face different TV social platforms, but it's your work. Sometimes we facing burnout and emotional. It's very difficult.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing with us. And I'm so sorry that you experienced that. I remember whenever you spoke on the floor and I read it on Facebook, you know, all the comments and stuff. And again, I'm so sorry, but it's a warrior. It's definitely warrior of you to stay in the homeland and do the work that you do.
I want to add that I had a lot of invitations from my friends who lived in France or German or the USA, different countries, to stay as a refugee. But it's not my life. I feel that I'm activist. I must stay here and continue for all our rights. It's very important too that society must understand that in Armenia now it's our life. We must stay in Armenia and continue.
Absolutely. You're right. I think maybe it is sometimes more easier to leave the homeland and do the work outside of the homeland, right? But I think it's super strong that you're staying, and the work that you do definitely does not go unnoticed. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts? Any other thoughts? Okay, we're gonna move on. I think we have time for one more question, and then I could pass the baton back to Patrick, just so we're all mindful of our time. Let's see. So this is honestly my question. I was curious if any of you do any work with other non-Armenian LGBTQIA activists. What does that mean? What is international solidarity for non-Armenian queer people? What does that look like? I'd love to learn more. If anybody does that work. Yes, Erik.
I mean, in my day job, I do work at One Archives Foundation as a director of education, and I definitely work with a lot of different ethnic and racial minority organizations that are also serving their LGBTQ communities. So there's always amazing solidarity that's built between different organizations when I work with them. But I specifically wanted to highlight one initiative that GALAS had 3 years ago called a Queer Pop-Up Cafe. And we ended up hosting 2 of those. And the aim for that program was to bring LGBTQIA folks from different racial and ethnic minorities together to all have a healthy and honest conversation about attitudes having to do with LGBTQ folks that I should say intersectional attitudes about LGBTQ folks that we hold towards other cultures and towards all cultures. So, you know, it ended up being a very healthy dialogue of folks from different backgrounds sharing their experiences with the common goal of understanding that we are all actually very similar. We are actually battling very similar battles, of course, with nuances having to do with each culture, and those are always going to be different, but there is potential for a lot more work that can be done in this circle. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we weren't able to continue these sessions, but this is something that GALAS is hoping to bring back sometime soon.
That's amazing. That's super dope. Thank you. Any other responses? Yes, Mamikon.
Yeah, for example, in Armenia, we cooperate a lot with similar countries like with Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, the places where issues are more or less similar. The same anti-gender groups are attacking queer movements and so on, because we find some common grounds to come together and see how they are fighting against these issues and what we can do together or learn from each other. And from other side, I also remembered what I forgot to say about diaspora support. If you are aware, there is a organization called Perch Armenia, and they are hosting a lot of amazing people from diaspora and making connections with the organizations. So we had a lot of amazing volunteers at Ping, and they had great contributions. So if anyone wants to come here and work in Armenia, whether it's with our organization or in other groups, just contact Birthright. It's a great opportunity. And also you will have chance to see the queer movement in Armenia and all its beauty and also troubles probably. So this kind of connections why I also remember Birthright, because Armenians from different parts of the world, they have different backgrounds and they were raised in different environments. That's also very interesting, how we learn from each other, how we see, of course it is hard in Armenia to be queer, but also it's not very easy in diaspora. We understand and we see people with different backgrounds, how they overcome the hardness, and that's a lesson also for us, how to learn from others' experiences.
Awesome, thank you. I love the Birthright shout out. I think there's a lot of young people in this room, so if you do have a free summer, please do what you can to dedicate that to the development in the homeland. Any other thoughts for this question? Any other thoughts? Yes, Lilit,
just I see all comments, and I want to say thank you very much for your kind words. I love you too.
Oh, thank you. That's so cute. Awesome. If there are no other responses, I think it's fair to pass the baton to Patrick so he could carry us on to the call to action question.
Thank you. So our call to action question for our panelists is, how do we all address the process of unlearning internalized homophobia, transphobia, or queerphobia? And I'm going to post it in the chat here. No particular order, so please feel free to share as things come to mind. It's a difficult question, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask for some clarification on the question. Is this on a personal level? Like, how do each of us kind of deal with our internalized homophobia, transphobia, queerphobia?
So it's a good follow-up question. I say it could be big picture or individual. So however you take that question, I think both are valid questions to seek answers for.
Well, I can say something not from the personal perspective, but from more of a public framework. I think that in general, we need to know, or we need to understand and perceive of reality with the basic premise that if I have a right, it only exists when it is equally secure to everyone. We have to really take to heart or internalize this concept that rights only exist when it's equal for all people, all individuals, because otherwise it's a privilege. So when we come to terms with that, then we start to see that at any moment that others are denied their rights, I'm exercising more of a privilege than a right. And then we see that the violation of the rights of others is a violation of a right that affects me, because the right in general is less secure. What I'm trying to say is that the whole premise of human rights is that rights aren't owned to, they're not my rights. I don't have rights individually. The right exists. The right protects me when it's a strong right, when the right is guaranteed, when the right has force and power. So it has to protect everyone in order to be a right that I can rely on. And so when rights are violated, as they routinely are, then it's more like I'm exercising privilege than a right. I think this is something that could help us broaden our perspective about our interactions with others and our need to defend rights universally.
Thank you for sharing that. Would anyone else like to share on the call to action? Yes, please, Perch.
So just for folks to know, I guess, internalized homophobia is a systemic problem which runs really deep, with a symptom of the heteronormative society that we live in. But, you know, if we work on it, we don't have to have it keep affecting us. And it could be a long journey to do so as well. But what I found that helped me, especially, of course, talking from my own experience, growing up in a household with, you know, parents telling me a man should do this, a guy should do that, you should wear this, talk like this, your body language should be like this, you know? So you're very conditioned into thinking what a cisgendered man should be. But what I found that helped me a lot was just to surround myself with other LGBTQ folks, both within my Armenian community and out. Doing so, you get to learn how to recognize those signs of homophobia or transphobia, and helps to commit to uplifting one another. Also too, I think we need much better LGBTQ plus representation in the media. I'm tired of what the stereotypical, you know, queer person should be or act like or look like. It's getting so old now. And then lastly, we do also need queer LGBTQ inclusive education from a young age. So yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to share a little bit about our call to action?
I can chime in. When I saw this question, I immediately thought about unlearning my own internalized homophobia and queerphobia that I have. So it's very much so a work in progress. And Perch talked about a lot of great points having to do with the ways that we're brought up and the expectations that are put upon us and all of that. And long story short, it takes a lot of soul searching. It really does. And there's no other way to put it. With the main aim of being kind to yourself unconditionally. And this goes out to all LGBTQ folks out there. Practice being kind towards yourself. The suffering that you may be experiencing is symptomatic of a very harsh society and generations and generations and millennia of oppression and prejudice that's come to this point. And on just a more practical note that it has helped me personally a lot is taking a critical look into who you surround yourself with, if you have the privilege to do so, and especially your intimate partners and people who you, whether platonically or romantically, are involved in on a day-to-day basis. the relationships that we have with people say a lot about how those internalized queer phobias and homophobias and transphobias and all the different kinds of gender and sexuality-based phobias may manifest in our lives. So being mindful of that.
I can also add that being born and raised in a heteronormative and patriarchal society, of course, it was hard. In the beginning, it was hard to understand that life can be different because we were put in a box and saying that this is right, this is wrong. And all I heard from the childhood that what is shame. In the beginning, also Erik mentioned about Amot. This is shame, the other thing is shame, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you are not a girl. And all that stereotypes, the binary approach and everything. And when I grow up and understand, in some point I understood that things can be different, then I was challenging myself to think different, to act different. But you know, in every moment, you face some contradictions against yourself, what you were taught and what you want to do. And it's hard to break the chain and get out of that box. But this is something that we learn every day. And I think also such discussions are very helpful because we listen to each other, we learn, and we look at ourselves from the side and what we see and what we want to achieve. That's a challenging game that we are playing every day and trying to make ourselves a better person.
Ես էլ ավելացնեմ, ինչպես Մամիկոնը ասեց, հա, մենք մի հասարակության մեջ ենք գտնվում, որ մի քիչ ավելի բարդ, ավելի դժվար է, գիտեք Հայաստանում իրականում ինչա տեղի ունենում, միայն կարող եմ ասել, որ պետքա միասին լինենք բոլորս ու պետքա բոլորով միասին աշխատենք ու շնորհակալություն այս հանդիպման համար Նախ շատ ուրախ եմ բոլորիդ հետ, ում հետ ծանոթ չէի ծանոթանալու համար, սա շատ լավ հնարավորություն է, որպեսզի հետագայում մենք ավելի լավ աշխատենք, որպեսզի նվազեցնենք եւ հոմոֆոբիան, եւ տրանսֆոբիան, եւ բիֆոբիան, եւ բոլոր ֆոբիաները։
Lilit mentioned that we live in a conservative society that makes things more difficult, but again, such discussions are very important because we come together and we have to be together to support each other. And also, Lilit thanked everybody for this meeting and glad to meet you all and to know you all because this is kind of a meeting that we can already cooperate and work think together about different things.
Thank you, Lilit. You know, I remember watching on YouTube the moment that Lilit approached the dais in the National Assembly, and she approached the dais with such conviction, with such confidence. It really was such a proud moment and such an important moment for the community. But thank you all. I just want to thank all our panelists for the extremely important work that they do for the LGBTQ, for the Armenian community. Your contributions are noteworthy and I am so grateful for all of you. Thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Fabiola.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Let me just prepare this setting so we can all start saying goodbye. So thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much, all of our amazing panelists and partners. My name is Fabiola Montiel. My pronouns are she, they, and ella, ella. And I am the Director of Racial and Gender Equity at YWCA Glendale and Pasadena. So first of all, let me tell you that we would love to stay in touch with everybody here on the call. And so in the chat, previously we shared the organizations, the panelists, social media links. And now we would like to share with you a couple of upcoming events. So the first one is to register for the upcoming 2022 Stand Against Racism Challenge. This is a 21-day business day challenge that addresses the topics of critical race theory, a living wage, film and television, including the cause of representation and inclusion, and lastly, reproductive justice. So that is one of the events upcoming. And then locally, we have from our partner organization, first Saturday coffee with GLendaleOUT. And at this moment, if you have any upcoming events that you would like to share with us in the chat, please share now. Lastly, you can follow all of these organizations via social media. So please consider following them through their Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook channels. And really, we want to thank you all for being here tonight, engaging in this panel and Q&A. And what we heard is that it really takes all of us to want to become allies and actively challenge heteronormative impositions and the gender binary. And a quick anecdote: as a cis woman and mother, when I was carrying my fetus, when I was pregnant, I had to remind my loved ones that they didn't have anything to say about my fetus in terms of what expectations they would like to see if it were a boy or a girl. And it was an education process, and that we are still going through at this age now that she's 8. And then some hurtful commentaries, obviously, from loved ones and just people that don't know me at all, but they still wanted to share their opinions. So it is everywhere. It is these impositions are everywhere. They are here before we are born, and it takes all of us to challenge them daily, from however we can do as allies, and or with simply not engaging in those commentaries. So thank you so much for your comments, and especially the co-coordinators of this event, Gray James from GLendaleOUT, Patrick Davarhanian, and from Glendale Unified School District, and obviously my colleague Hasmik Bournazian. Thank you so much for everybody. This is the end of it. I hope it's the very first event, but this concludes our event tonight. So thank you so much for everybody to be here tonight, and we will follow up with a thank you email for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Patrick and Hasmik.
Thank you for running this. It was
Yeah.
amazing, y'all.
Yes.
We had a lot of participants.
Yes, we did. I think some folks may be still extracting that sign-in sheet, huh?
Yeah.